I am Anthologies, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today, I have my feature author of the month of October. And no other than Miss Jennifer Brozek.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fabulous, fabulous like you, Miss Jennifer. And can you please introduce yourself?
I'm Jennifer Brozek. I'm a full-time author, editor, and media tie-in writer. I've been doing this for over 17 years. And a few awards. I've been nominated for the Bram Stoker, Hugo, British Fantasy Award. I just recently won the Scribe Award for one of my Shadowrun young adult books. I am currently managing a new Shadowrun magazine for Catalyst Game Labs that has an open call if anybody out there is an author.
Yes. Congratulations, Miss Jennifer, and thank you for sharing your talents to the world. So, what is the first step in starting a novel, and how do you begin?
Well, that's a very good question because I'm starting my next novel right now. And I think it's novel number 17. And I have to tell you, every single time, even though I begin the same way, it feels like every novel is different. So I start with the concept. What is this specific book about? Then I start outlining. And the way I outline is it's not specifically formal. Because as I tell every author, the system you use is the best system is the one that you will use. So I use a 5-act scene where I do 5 bullet points.
Yes.
And then in each one of those, I do 5 acts. I say, what are the points there? And then the way I write, I know each one of those bullet points is going to become a chapter. And the chapter will be 2,000 to 3,000 words long. And then I know halfway through I'm going to re-outline because I discover things as I outline. And then at the 2/3 mark, I'll do the same thing because usually towards the end of a book, everything runs off the rails. But starting is the hardest part for me. So I will write the outline and then I will stare at a blank page for, 1 or 2 days, sometimes a week. And then I will write a terrible paragraph. Just terrible. An opening scene.
Okay.
Because it's so much easier to edit what's on the page than to create wholesale. So if I put something down, anything down, I can come back and fix it in post, as they say. I can edit it and make it better. So
how do you how you decide on the genre and tone of your novel?
Well, if I'm under contract, that kind of narrows the bandwidth. Right now, I'm writing a lot of Shadowrun, which is cyberpunk with magic in the near future. So it's kind of dystopian, and the characters I'm writing about are usually people who run they're Shadowrunners. They do jobs within the shadows of society, let's say. They are not necessarily villains or criminals, but they're also not necessarily good guys. With Shadowrun, if you look at it from a corporate point of view, every Shadowrunner is a criminal. If you look at it from the Shadowrunner's point of view, they are trying to make a living outside the mainstream of what is considered acceptable within the Shadowrun universe. And I like to write characters who straddle that line. They have an acceptable persona that they show to the mainstream everybody, but then they have a second side to them. Because most of us, We are made of multitudes, so we have very different sides to it. So for this specific thing, I'm in the third book of a 4-book series. The first one was Makeda Red, then Elfin Black, and then now it's Emery Gray. And each book has a different main protagonist. Though one of the characters that could be the protagonist one book could be the villain in the next book. So they all cross over. So that's how I decide when I'm under contract. When I'm not under contract, I write what I want to read. And right now I have a series I really want to write, which I call men's soap operas. Do you know the Mac Bullen books, the Executioner, Casca, those kind of books?
Yes, miss.
I would like to write one about an immortal thief.
Oh, looking forward for that. So, what are the essential elements of compelling story, and how do you integrate them?
Well, your characters, no matter how extraordinary and outstanding they are, have to still be relatable. If you read a story and someone's perfect, you get bored with that because there's no stakes, there's no tension, because we live our lives in a tension where we have our wants and our needs, and then we have what society needs from us, and what work versus play. So there's a balance of tensions. So you have to be relatable. The next thing is the character has to want something. Hudson Hawk was one of my favorite movies. It's a dumb comedy. I can't remember who the actor is. Bruce something. The main character is a thief who just got out of prison, and all he wants is a cappuccino. That's it. That's all he wants through the entire movie. And it is the funniest thing, because every time he almost gets it, something bad
Yes.
happens.
Yes.
And you want your characters to want something, because we all want something. We all have desires. So make it compelling. The other thing is a writer trick, which is to end every chapter on a mini cliffhanger.
Yes.
Where you make the character, the reader go, oh, I can't stop now. Because if you stop reading at the end of a chapter, it's very easy to put a book down and not pick it back up. And I don't want that to happen.
So, how do you develop a strong, engaging opening scene to capture the reader's attention?
Well, there's a technique called in media res, which means start in the middle of the action. And the action can be as mundane as a conversation. But it's a conversation where you're having a fight. I mean, it's not like an argument fight. I have basically started my current scene with my current book with the club owner talking to his manager. And the opening line is, "Are you listening to me, Emery?" And you're like, oh, that's kind of a slightly aggressive, are you listening to me? That you could take it in many different ways.
Yes.
And the main character basically like, yes, I'm listening to you. I don't want to listen to you, but I have to. And then the main character and the manager is pointing out, hey, the mayor's office has called you. And he's like, I don't care. I'm not dealing with those people. Dealing with mercenaries back in Rabat was way easier than dealing with these small town politicians. No, I'm not dealing with them. And I'm with this vehemence of I am not dealing with them. Of course, I'm setting up a foreshadowing of course, he's going to have to deal with them. And those are the things that you want to do. You want to set up what's the conflict immediately. And it can be a small conflict. And most novels have multiple plot lines, multiple throughput themes. The main one is, for this one, is Emery's having to deal with these horrifically bigoted politicians who want to use his club for a political thing. and he doesn't want to, but he's going to be forced into it. But there are other plot lines. Like he has a long distance relationship with a woman back in Rabat. And they have a tension of he wants her to come to Seattle, and she wants him to come back to Rabat. But neither of them can actually go because of circumstances. She can't leave Rabat. He can't get into Rabat. He's been exiled. So there's that tension. And then a body is going to hit the floor, let's just say. You know me, I kill a lot of people fictionally. And a thing is going to happen, and two people are actually going to die in his office. And there's going to be a plot line of what to do with these bodies, how to get rid of them, and these are important people, so they can't just disappear, can they? So all these plot lines are going on at the same time. And throughout this, what Imre wants is actually something nostalgic. He wants something that he used to have, but he doesn't have it anymore because circumstances have forced them out of his home and into another country. So.
Very well said. Ms. Jennifer, so how do you establish your novel's central premise or main idea?
Could you repeat the question?
How do you establish your novel's central premise or main idea?
So Shadowrun is a tie-in, and that means I'm writing in someone else's world. So whatever story I write, it has to fit that world and what is needed there. So whenever I establish what the main premise is, and in this case, it is fighting against the political machinations. And it's very small stakes. I tell micro stories in a macro universe because Shadowrun is a worldwide story, and it's been around for 35 years as an IP. So there are certain themes that are always in a Shadowrun novel. The main characters are always fighting against the authorities or who's in charge. They are often doing something that's considered illegal, and a lot of times it is illegal because, they're running the shadows. Theft, murder, kidnapping, whatever it is illegal. And they know it's illegal, but this is the life that they have chosen. So the main premise is often not necessarily that the main character is a good guy, but they are fighting against what they consider is an injustice of some kind in the world. I edited a novel by Russell Zimmerman called Dark Synergy, also Shadowrun. Incredibly satisfying novel. His main character is corporate, which is the general enemy of Shadowrun. But he has to work with it. He's corporate. He enjoys being corporate, but he has a conflict with other people within the corporation who he feels are not living up to the ideals of the corporation. So he still has that conflict between their doing an injustice, but I have these rules I have to follow, but I'm going to have to break these rules in order to do what I believe is right. And that is the core of almost every Shadowrun novel. Even at its basic level. I mean, I've run stories where the main plot line was, how can we steal something so we can make money to have a party? It can be that simple.
Yes. So what is the importance of having a clear protagonist, and how do you create one?
A clear protagonist is one you would recognize without having dialogue attributions. To give you a visual example, at the end of many of the Marvel movies, there's the credit scene. You have a person there, and a voice comes from off screen, and you never see them, but you know exactly who that person is. When you're writing, you want your main characters to have a clear voice. They have a clear want. They have a clear, specific way of speaking. They react in a common way. So when they don't react that way, it is a shock. Because a lot of times you need that. Because stories are about people being forced out of their comfort zones and being forced to do extreme things, and so they have reactions. So a clear character is one that you know what their normal reactions are. This scene in the club, in his office, having this conversation with his club manager, actually references them being Shadowrunners and him leading the team, and the way the two of them communicate with each other is one that was established 2 books ago. And when you get to a point where you want to have a conversation where you have two people talking back and forth in lines of dialogue, you want it to be clear enough that you don't have to have any dialogue attributions as to who's speaking. You can tell by the tone and the words used and the rate, the pace of speaking, who's speaking. I mean, you want to have the dialogue attributions, that helps. But if you can have a conversation of 6 or 8 lines and you know who's speaking without the dialogue attributions, that's a good way to know that you have a clear vision of who your main characters are.
Certainly, Miss Jennifer. So, how do you create a memorable antagonist or opposition for your protagonist?
So here's the thing about antagonists and villains, and they are different. Nobody wakes up one day and says, I'm going to be the bad guy. Usually. Occasionally there are people who are just malevolent. What they do is they look at the world or the situation and say, that is wrong, and only I know how to make it right. Therefore, I am going to do absolutely everything I need to do to fix this situation to my satisfaction. Most antagonists are not, they're not stereotypical mwahaha. They're nuanced. They have things. They have needs. They love people. But they have a unrelenting, driving need to do the thing that they're doing. Come hell or high water. They don't care who they hurt as long as the ends justifies the means. They absolutely want what they want. There is a book called Save the Cat. And it's actually a screenwriting book. I don't know have you heard it?
No, sorry.
So there's 2 books. There's Save the Cat and Save the Cat writes a novel. Save the Cat is about a screenplay. And it references a 1950s Western. In the middle of this Western, there is a flood, and there is a villain, and he is most definitely the villain.
Okay.
At some point, he looks down and there is a kitten being swept along by the flood, and he reaches down and he grabs the kitten out of the water, he pets it, and he puts it down. And it's this little tiny act of kindness and humanity that brings nuance to the villain. And suddenly he's not just a caricature, he's a person. Most villains are like that. And when I'm writing one, I like to keep all of those nuances in mind. Now, the heroes and the readers don't necessarily need to see all of those nuances because it muddies the water. You want a villain to be a villain. You want them to be an antagonist. But this can be hard, especially if in some cases they're right.
Yes, I agree. So, how do you determine the point of view for the first person or third person that
Mm.
best fits for your story?
So, sometimes it's genre. Sometimes it is the age, young adult versus adult. There are certain... Okay, so back in the day, there was a point of view called Universal. One of the most famous books is Frank Herbert's Dune. You could be inside anybody's character's head at any one time in the story. That style of narration has fallen out of favor. So, by and large, if you're writing young adult, you are either writing first person, which is just the reader and the character know only what the main character, knows. There's a difference between close and not. Close, first person, you're in their head. Close means there's like a camera sitting on their shoulder, but not inside their head. So you see everything that the main character sees and hears it, but you don't necessarily hear their thoughts. Otherwise, most people write third person or third person closed, past tense. There are very few books or stories that can be in second person. And one of the best horror novels I've ever read was Dark Harvest by Norman Partridge. It's actually apparently just become a movie. And he wrote it in second person. And it was amazing. Second person basically means you are the character that you're reading about. It's really interesting. And the prose is you already know what's happening, even though you as a reader don't the first time you read it. So there's a really hard, it's really tricky talent to give information without saying, Bob, you know that this happened. No, you lay down world building in a more subtle way. So for me, I write most comfortably in third person because then I can switch between character points of view. Now, you can do first person and have multiple points of view. You just have to use different techniques, like one point of view per chapter. And you can jump between the two characters in their heads. I did that for my BattleTech Rogue Academy trilogy. For the first two books, I had 3 points of view characters. For the third book, I had 4 characters. And that's because, and I didn't want to do it, I wanted to stick with 3. But the story forced me to bring in the point of view character it was an ally to the bad guy, but the ally was like, no, you really are insane. I'm going to go my own way. And my editor, basically, when we had a discussion about it, he's like, you know what? Just do it. I know you don't want to do 3, do 4.
A quartet.
Yeah.
Do as a quartet. So, what is the role of dialogue in a novel writing, and how do you write effective dialogue?
Dialogue. You and I are looking at each other through the screen. And I gesture and I watch your face. And we are actually having a dialogue without words. 80% of communication is body language. So your dialogue has to fit the body language, or very specifically, you have to juxtapose them. So dialogue is a means to an end. It is getting information out and receiving information in a much more interesting way than an info dump. Now, you and I could be having a conversation where we're very perfectly pleasant with each other. So anybody hearing it thinks, oh, they're having a great conversation. But we could actually be circling each other like cat and mouse, predator and prey. And the words and the body language are completely different. There was a TV series called Hannibal that made beautiful use of body language. So I try not to use dialogue attributions. I try to use body language. So I don't like to use the word he said or she said. I like to have the speaking part and then a movement body language to complement the dialogue. And the importance of dialogue, beyond telling a story, the words used tell the reader more about the character than you may first realize. There's a difference between I will get there at 5 o'clock and I will arrive at 5. The two, I will get there at 5, basically says I'm a normal Joe Schmo. I'm going to get there. It's going to be 5 o'clock, just so you know. I will arrive at 5 o'clock basically means I am of a higher class and I expect you to be there waiting for me when I arrive. There's nuance of dialogue. When you have to do an accent, you want to, it tells people where different places they're from in the United States, a Boston accent versus a Southern accent versus a Texas accent versus the Pacific Northwest. But you want to use it sparingly because you want to establish it so that the reader can hear it in their mind, but then you don't want to beat them over the head with it, with the types of words that you use. So dialogue, beyond telling the actual story, tells you so much more about the characters, where they're from, how they grew up, what is their education level, do they code switch? Do you know what code switching means?
No, can you enlighten us?
Okay, so code switching, we do it every day. You talk with your guests in a very specific way. It is different than the way you speak to your best friend or your spouse. You have a specific set of language and body language as well. You have one for work, you have one for play, you have one for lovers, you have one for small children. Everybody code switches on a regular basis. And sometimes it's not. It's because it's necessary and not comfortable. For example, I grew up military. There is a certain set of languages and words and body language you use on a military base. You stand up straighter. You talk about, policing the area. Then did you go on TDY? You get a little bit more formal, there's a different set of customs and courtesies. A main character, and I do this frequently, will have a specific type of language to speak when they're speaking to their superior boss or the person who has power over them, than with their best friend or the person they have power over. And the tones and the words used and the language will all give you clues as to where they are in the hierarchy, how they feel about this person. I had in a previous book, Elf in Black, you have a main character's asking somebody for something. And he was just like, all right, this ain't my first rodeo. I've been here before. But the phone rings. And he has to answer it. And he's like, oh, yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. No problem, sir. Of course, sir. And he puts the phone down, and there's a moment, and he just starts swearing. Like truckers' dialogue from the Navy background. Like he swears. And then he's done. And then he turns back to the main character, and he's like, all right, chummers. That there is the person I have to deal with. And he has something that is bothering me. So I'm going to make you solve my problem for me. If you want me to help you, you have to help me. And so there's the language used tells you how they feel or what is the mask that they had to put on because he hates his boss, like flat out hates him.
Yes.
And you know that by the way he puts the phone down and then he just like, I hope very bad things happen to you.
Very well said, Miss Jennifer. And to sum up our discussion, what are your short-term and long-term goals in writing?
Why don't you give me a hard question? Okay. Short-term and long-term goals. Well, I've got 2 more novels that I am under contract with for Catalyst Game Labs. And one of those novels is due by the rough draft is due by the end of the year. So I'm going to call that a short term. But most novels is long term. I am turning in an anthology I'm editing today. I have one more story to edit after this. And I have to get the first issue of Augment magazine in the can for its February release date. So that's my short term right there. Oh, also, I'm running for syphilis president.
Oh,
that's
good
coming on.
luck.
Yeah, thank you. But long term, I would like to see that the magazine works, do the full year. I'd like to finish these 2 novels, and I'd like to actually start that Immortal Thief series.
Yes, people. Miss Jennifer Brozek, award-winning author. And can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Well, the best way to find my books is to go to my brand new website, jenniferbrozek.com. It has a newsletter, which you get some free fiction on if you sign up for it. It's once a month because my PA makes me do it. And all of my books are listed. The best way to support me is to buy my books and to leave a review. If you leave a review, your words, as simple as I really like this book, may entice other people to try it out. So come to my website, jenniferbrozek.com, and see what I have a lot of different genres. So there's something there for you to try out.
Yes, we're gonna talk all about those genre, people, because Miss Jennifer will be my feature author of the month of October. So we do have 5 episodes to talk all the books that you want to talk about. So Miss Jennifer, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Morning, people. See you soon.